In the year 2037, the world held its breath. For decades, Mars had been a distant dream, a red dot in the night sky, a place of mystery, danger, and unimaginable challenge. But now, humanity stood on the brink of making that dream real. The first crewed mission to establish a permanent settlement on the red planet was ready. After years of planning, testing, and international cooperation, the spacecraft Aurora prepared to depart from low Earth orbit. Inside, a crew of 6 astronauts, engineers, scientists, a doctor, and a commander represented the combined hope and ambition of humanity. "We're not just going to visit," Commander Elena Morales said into her headset before launch. "We're going to stay." Those words would echo in history. The journey to Mars took over 6 months. Inside Aurora, the crew lived in a constant hum of machinery, floating through the confined corridors of the ship. They passed the time with experiments, system checks, and video calls home, though the delay in communication grew longer each day. At first it was less than a second. By the halfway point, messages took over 10 minutes to cross the void. "It's strange," flight engineer Ravi Patel wrote in a log entry. "You're talking to someone you love, but by the time they hear your words, you're already doing something else. It's like your voices live in different timelines." Outside the windows, the sun shrank to a bright star, and Mars grew larger, from a distant point of light to a looming world, rust-red, cratered, alien. Landing was the most dangerous phase. The spacecraft detached from its interplanetary transfer stage and began its descent through Mars' thin atmosphere. Unlike Earth, the atmosphere here wasn't thick enough to slow the craft with parachutes alone. Rockets had to fire in perfect sequence to keep the ship from smashing into the surface. Alarms blared. Numbers raced across screens. "Hold steady, landing burn active. 50 meters. 20, touchdown confirmed." Mission control erupted on Earth. Millions watching on live streams cheered. On Mars, the crew sat still for a moment, breathing hard in their helmets, before Commander Morales spoke. "We are home."
Home, however, was a generous word. Outside was a frozen desert with temperatures that could drop below -100 degrees Celsius. The thin air was mostly carbon dioxide. Dust storms could last for weeks. To survive, the crew moved quickly, unloading habitat modules from cargo landers that had arrived months earlier. These prefabricated domes, linked by pressurized tunnels, became the settlement's core. They called it Horizon Base. Inside, the air was breathable, warmed by nuclear generators. The first night, the crew ate together in the small galley, rehydrated pasta and protein bars, and looked through a dome window at the barren landscape. "It feels like we're living inside a snow globe," said biologist Dr. Amina Hassan, "except the snow is red." The first weeks were all about survival. Life support systems had to be tested and retested. Solar panels were deployed for additional power. Water was extracted from frozen soil by heating it in sealed tanks, then filtered and stored. Every drop mattered. The greenhouses were assembled, transparent cylinders filled with earth, soil and seeds, lettuce, potatoes, wheat. Under bright LED lights, the first shoots emerged after 17 days, a fragile green against the endless rust outside. "It's funny," Ravi joked in the video log. "We traveled millions of kilometers to Mars, and the thing that makes us happiest is salad." Daily life followed a strict schedule. Every morning began with system checks, oxygen levels, power output, radiation shielding. Afternoons were for building new structures, testing rovers, or collecting samples from the surrounding plains. The settlement was located near an ancient riverbed, chosen for its potential water ice deposits and relatively flat terrain. The crew explored cautiously, wearing bulky suits that made each step a slow bounce. Mars gravity, just 38% of Earth's, made lifting heavy equipment easier, but falls were dangerous. One wrong move could damage a suit. "You don't think about air until every breath depends on a machine strapped to your back," Dr. Hassan noted in a recorded message to students on Earth. Communication with Earth was limited by the time delay, but updates from Horizon Base became a global obsession. People tuned in daily to see the settlers' progress, a new greenhouse expansion, a rover returning with rock cores, the first Martian sunrise filmed from the base's observation dome. Yet not everything went smoothly. In the third month, a dust storm swept across the plains. It blotted out the sun, covering the solar panels in a fine red powder. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The crew switched to emergency power and hunkered down inside for nearly a week. "It was like the world outside disappeared," said pilot Marcus Lee. "No sound, no horizon, just the wind." Repairs after the storm were exhausting. Dust got into machinery, clogged filters, and scratched visor glass. But the settlers adapted. They developed new cleaning protocols and used static-charged brushes to keep panels clear. The experience bonded the crew, reinforcing the fact that on Mars, survival was a team effort. Disagreements happened over resource allocation, over long work hours, but conflicts had to be resolved quickly. There was no room for grudges in a place where you might depend on the person next to you to save your life. By the 6th month, Horizon Base had grown. Additional living modules had been inflated and connected. The first child-sized habitat for experiments in animal life support was functioning, hosting small insects and fish to test multi-generational survival in Martian conditions. The greenhouse yielded its first real harvest. Potatoes and leafy greens. They were still supplemented by shipped rations. But the symbolism was powerful. Humanity had begun to feed itself on another world. Beyond daily routines, the settlers found moments to simply exist in this strange new home. On rest days, some would take short rover trips to explore nearby cliffs and valleys, or climb small hills to watch the two tiny moons, Phobos and Deimos, rise and set within hours. Morales liked to sit by the observation dome at evening, though Martian days were just 40 minutes longer than Earth's, and watch the colors change from dusty gold to deep crimson. "It's harsh here," she once said in a recorded message. "But it's also beautiful in ways you can't describe. You feel like you're standing at the edge of human history." The mission's success inspired waves of investment and new missions from Earth. Robotic cargo ships brought more supplies, building materials, and even new settlers. Horizon Base became the seat of a small but growing colony. Plans were drawn for underground habitats to protect from radiation, for larger agricultural domes, for mining operations to extract useful minerals from the soil. The settlers knew they were part of something that would outlast them. "We're just the first chapter," Dr. Hassan said. Future generations will write the rest." Yet the dangers never went away. In month 8, an equipment failure caused a partial oxygen loss in one habitat. Alarms shrieked. The crew raced to seal the breach and restore pressure. It was a reminder that here, there was no margin for error. Even a small mistake could mean disaster. "It keeps you humble," Marcus admitted later. "You might think you've tamed this place, but Mars doesn't care. You earn every day you survive." Over time, traditions formed. Every week, the settlers gathered for a shared meal, playing music from home countries and telling stories. Birthdays were celebrated with improvised cakes made from stored flour and chocolate. They planted a small memory garden in one greenhouse, where each crew member placed a plant from their homeland. It became a symbol of unity, a patch of earth thriving millions of kilometers away. As the first Martian year came to a close, nearly 2 Earth years, Horizon Base had transformed from a fragile outpost into a true settlement. It wasn't self-sufficient yet, but it was stable, growing, and learning. The settlers had endured storms, shortages, and isolation, and they had adapted. Looking back at Earth, a pale blue dot now hanging low in the sky, they felt both the distance and the connection more deeply than ever. "It's strange," Morales reflected in a final message of the year. "We came here to explore a new world. But in doing so, we've learned more about ourselves, about patience, cooperation, and the will to endure than we ever imagined."